Welcome to our special episode of the Community First podcast. This is where we have social and legal conversations with the community. I am Bessie Ejewa Krentil, one of your hosts. With me is
David William Prempe.
So this third episode is special for two main reasons. Firstly, it climaxes the launch of our Community Legal Outreach Week. And it's also special because of our guests. Our guests for today's episode are three students from the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School in the United States. They have been in Ghana for about a week, and together with the lawyers here at B&P Associates, they have partaken in several activities ranging from tours and sightseeing, hiking, legal outreaches, and educational tours. So Akwaba,
guys. You don't know the response for that. You can say Medas.
Medas.
I think Astonique got it. Thank you. Anyway, so before we start, I'd like you guys to tell us briefly about your experience, your general experience so far in Ghana, and also how you got to partner with B&P Associates. So,
I'm Astonique Robinson. I'm a first-year law student at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm really enjoying Ghana so far. The people are really kind. Everyone has been super welcoming, and you just get to see something new every day here. So I'm enjoying it.
I'm Asja Towns. I am a first-year law student also from University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School. Generally, I think that my experience in Ghana has definitely defied any preconceived notions that I had about Ghana. And so I'm really grateful to B&P for hosting us and mentoring us.
My name is Frank Deese. I am a second-year law student at the University of Pennsylvania, and I have loved being in Ghana. I feel like I have found my home. They welcomed me home, and here I am. I'm looking for my family.
So how did you guys get to partner with B&P Associates?
Yeah, so we're all part of the Black Law Student Association at Penn, and I am a co-chair along with Chisholm. We are always looking for an annual place to go somewhere in the Black diaspora globally that we can do some good and do some pro bono work.
Okay.
And so we began putting the trip together this year. We knew we wanted to come to Ghana. We wanted to find the best law firm around. We did some searching and we landed on B&P's website. We were very impressed. So we reached out.
I see. Anyway, nice to have you all here on behalf of the firm and I think the entire Ghanaian citizenry. We welcome you once again to the country. And we know you had the opportunity to visit Nsawam medium security prisons. So this episode is going to focus more on, your experiences there. Yeah, Bessie.
Yeah, so we will be talking about what you saw, what you observed, how you felt, and a few challenges you identified with the system. So let's just get started. I'm really eager to hear about your experience.
Me too.
So my first question, obviously, is can you tell us about your experience visiting the Nsawam prison? And what were your initial thoughts and feelings?
Sure, I'll start. So I think it's similar to my general experience of Ghana. I think that the experience at the prison also defied my preconceived notions about the prison system in Ghana. I think it was really eye-opening, and I think it was just really interesting.
My initial thoughts were that we see a terrible condition, that what we would see would be something we wouldn't forget, and it would be something that we would have to really steel ourselves for. But that's not the experience that I had. I think we'll expand on it later, but we were really able to see prisoners in generally good condition, enjoying being outdoors, enjoying community with one another, and being in a good relationship with the guards as well. So it definitely defied my expectations as well.
Okay. So what surprised you the most during your visit?
I think what I just said kind of surprised me the most. I did not expect, it's kind of like an open air market, very casual, very laid back, and just respectful. I didn't expect that. I have not really visited prisons before. So my only thought about it came from what the media has shown me, what I've seen on TV or in shows. So it was very surprising to me how casual it was.
One thing that really surprised me was I just remember immediately seeing the military style uniforms and the gestures and thinking like, oh gosh, like what is this? And then at the end of the tour, what I immediately thought it was going to be was quite the opposite of what I actually experienced. So that was surprising to me.
So how did you guys prepare, like mentally, for the visit? How did you guys prepare for it?
For me, it was talking a lot with some of the other students I'm here with. I had concerns because I've never visited a prison in the United States. I've never been in like a prison facility.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was worried just about, I think for me, the emotional effect that it would have on me to be there with other human beings who like cannot leave. So I was just having conversations with some of the folks here just about my fears about, okay, if there's a language barrier, how are we going to ensure that we can communicate with them? Or do they know that we are coming? Like, are they expecting us? And so just doing a lot of like prep work and like emotional work before actually getting in the van to go.
I actually do want to add something on this. So on the ride there, I Googled the prison's website because prisons usually have like vision statements and objectives. And so I kind of like wrote down the objectives and part of the vision statement, which was generally just public safety. And I just wanted to like have that in the back of my mind so I could really see if those objectives were being achieved. So
did you guys face any challenges during your visit to the prisons? Any particular challenges?
A challenge that I had was my own, what I already thought when I came in. So one thing I was impressed by was when we were speaking to the commander in charge, you really got a sense of how they approach incarceration, and everything he said sounded great. They have a really progressive viewpoint. And I felt that I was being challenged in that moment because, you know, you come from the Western world, or you come from the United States, and you come to a place like Ghana, and you're learning a lot each day. You're seeing things you've never seen. And you kind of expect when you go to a prison that it's just going to be like you're going to go back in time almost. But everything he said and the way they approach it was really progressive, even more so than some places in the United States, I would say. And so my own preconceived conception, I guess, was already being challenged in that moment.
Okay. So can you briefly describe the conditions in Ghanaian prisons? Were they any different from what you actually expected?
Sure, I'll describe them, or I'll try to give a reflection as to how they were different than what I expected. I think so. I also watched some YouTube videos before we got there, and
YouTube videos of the Ghanaian prisons.
Yes.
Oh wow.
And I think because, let me just preface this by saying we didn't see where they lived. So I think what I got was much different than what I thought I was gonna get. But like Frank said, it was very open. It was a lot of sunlight. And it was very casual. It was a very casual, kind of peaceful atmosphere. And so that was different than what I expected.
One thing that we saw that I didn't expect was that they have an IT program where there are some of the inmates are learning like new IT skills, and hopefully will take exams and get certificates that will be useful for them once they're released. And I didn't expect there to be such a robust effort towards education, which I think is really, really important just in terms of recidivism and just in terms of personal growth and development while they're at the facility. So that was interesting to see.
I agree with what's been said. It was surprising to see, and those were the conditions that we saw. We don't know what we didn't see. We were told about overcrowding, that being a real issue at the prison. So we don't know, what the rooms look like or kind of what people are going through outside of that open air environment.
Okay. So did you have any interactions with the inmates during your visit?
Yes.
Okay. And what were these interactions like?
So I was in a small group with myself and two other students. We spoke with one inmate, and we were just asking him about, what led him to the situation that he's in now, to be in prison, what sorts of opportunities have been available to him during his time, and some challenges that he foresees when he's released, and something that he really spoke to us about was just the stigma that comes along with being incarcerated, and the fact that when he leaves, it's possible that like his family may not want to interact with him anymore. It'll be difficult for him to find employment. Basically, you become a social outcast of sorts. And so it was interesting to see that like they go away, and when they come back, the world is completely different, and they may not have that social safety net or that community that they once had.
Yeah. And how about the officers, the prison officers? I'm sure you got to interact with some of them. What was your impression of them?
My impression was that they were very professional. They were very jovial and friendly with one another as well. Yeah. And I'll say that about the inmates as well. As we walked around, everyone seemed to be in harmony. Yeah. I mean, as you know, I got called Rasta a lot because of my hair. People were smiling, waving, and it was nice. We went and saw, the programs they had, and they welcomed us in, allowed us to talk to them. The guards, they were fist bumping with the guards. Everybody seemed pretty comfortable.
So were there any initiatives or programs in place that you observed during your visits that really stood out to you?
There was one that was focused on construction and architecture. So there was actually an inmate who was leading the class and teaching some other inmates just about how to, craft the buildings. And the work that they were doing was, I'm not an artistic person at all. So I was just fascinated by some of the buildings that they had created. And while some of them were, drawing on physical paper, he was able to, transport what they were doing onto a PC. So that was really, really cool.
So, Asja, have you been to any prisons in America yourself?
Yes.
You have? And what was the experience like?
So, let me just say, I haven't been to a prison. I've been to 2 jails. Okay. I've been in Manhattan, there's a jail called the Tombs. Okay. And then Rikers Island, which a lot of people are familiar with, which is also in New York. Okay. I would just say generally it's very depressing.
Why? Why is it depressing?
I mean, something about metal and just still, it's just very depressing. Something about just the lack of sunlight is very, very depressing and disheartening. So that's my general experience with prisons or jails in America.
Okay. So do you think there are some differences you noted between the prisons there in the States and those in Ghana? Yeah,
definitely. One, I think primary difference between the two is just the guards in Ghana, the way they're intentional about interpersonal relationships with themselves and the inmates. It seems like they have a pretty good relationship with them, a pretty good rapport. And I think that contributes to the general feeling of just safety and peace in the prison. That's very different than America. My uncle was actually, he just retired as a correction officer at Rikers Island. And he would always talk about just how severely disharmonious the relationships between the inmates and the guards were, and that also leads to a lot of violence in the prisons, and
that's in sharp contrast to what
yes.
Frank experienced with the Ghanaian prisons.
Exactly.
So what about similarities? Any similarities?
Overcrowding, definitely overcrowding. Which I think is a huge cause for concern, especially in Ghana. Yeah.
All right, Frank, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I would say a lack of resources is a similarity, not to the same extent, but American prisons face that same issue of making sure that each inmate is able to get adequate resources and what they need.
I see. So you mentioned you got to interact with the inmates. During your interaction with them, did you happen to ask them about prison recidivism? I'm sure you're aware of that.
I did. The inmate that we got to interview, he talked about not having the support that he feels he needs. Mm-hmm. It was in contrast to what we had heard from the guards, where they talked about their approach and how important it is to make sure that they're helping people develop the skills they need to not come back. But he felt that they weren't being given adequate support. They weren't being given what they needed outside to kind of erase that stigma, because he felt like once they get out, they kind of have nowhere to go. They don't know where to start. If they don't have that family support, the government isn't really there to support them in that same way. They don't really know what to do, so they end up going back to their same habits and reoffending.
Is there a common phenomenon in the US as well? I mean, inmates, leaving and then returning.
Yes. I've seen figures where it's almost 50% of people reoffend. So it's a real issue in the United States. And something that I guess any government or any system, incarceration system, has to work to.
So what
to
do you
fix.
think in the US are some of the factors that contribute towards prison? Asja, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I think lack of employment. I think that something that's probably unique to the United States as opposed to Ghana is racial disparities, and just like the overwhelming presence of police in Black communities. And so if someone is released from prison, they're more likely, if they're Black, to be sent back just because they're more likely to be policed. So I think socioeconomic factors as well as racial factors play a role in recidivism.
And do you think the American government is doing enough to control or reduce it? What do you think? Astonique, do you think the American government is doing enough to reduce prison recidivism?
No, I don't think so. I think, like Asja said, the lack of employment is a huge issue. I mean, if people have access to all the resources that they need, I mean, we're talking like basic needs, the odds that they're going to commit criminal offenses are lower. And so I think we could be doing more there. But also, once someone has been to prison, I think we focus so much on stigmatizing them and making them feel like, okay, your whole life is condemned now because you've been to prison. And I think that doesn't put someone in the best mindset to want to change and improve. It's like, I think there needs to be some just like affirmation of their humanity and their ability to change post prison.
What of the Ghanaian government? When you visited Nsawam, did you witness any steps or practices that ultimately aim to curb prison recidivism?
I think we saw programs, vocational programs and other resources there that could help. But I think an issue with both the American government and the Ghanaian government, and really governments around the world, is that they don't take a holistic approach to this issue. It's really piecemeal. Their prison system is separate from their welfare system, from how they feed their citizens, from the resources that citizens outside of the prison system have. Because that's one thing we talked about after our visit, was that it would be great if we had these kind of vocational programs and resources available to Ghanaians in the first place, to make sure they're getting an adequate education, to make sure they're on a path where they don't end up in that situation. Right.
Yeah, that's true. And Asja, do you want to say something?
I also think something that I found important was just the emphasis on public education, and just trying to reduce the stigma through sensitizing the public to the inmates and seeing them as humans rather than criminals.
All right.
So what do you think are some practices or policies that both jurisdictions could learn from each other to reduce this concept? Or
one thing I learned yesterday from actually an associate here at the firm is that Ghana does not have for-profit prisons, which is in stark contrast to the American prison system. There are for-profit prisons. And I think it pushes the carceral system to just continue to chug and put more people in prison because it's economically beneficial to do so. So I think that the United States could learn from Ghana in not operating for-profit prisons.
I just want to piggyback off that. I mentioned earlier, I think that overcrowding is a cause for concern in Ghana. And I think the reason for that is because when overcrowding started to happen in America, just due to like the war on drugs and the tough on crime era, that's when prisons started to become privatized. And so I think that if Ghana is not willing to budge on its just extent of like them being punitive, I think that they should adopt other alternatives to incarceration, like parole, like we talked about, or probation, to sort of like ameliorate the issue of overcrowding and mass incarceration.
I would just advocate for a more human-centered approach. Again, that was kind of the impression that we got in the prison. And it is something I'd like to see both in the United States increased and here, where we put inmates, we see them as the citizens that they are, and give them the support that they need.
Okay. So finally, what message would you like to send to the families of inmates based on your experience visiting Ghanaian prisons?
Keep showing up for them. Keep bringing them food, bringing them clothes, pictures, writing them letters. That's one thing one of the inmates kind of emphasized to us, that support from family and friends is very important.
Yeah.
And I think it will also aid in their reentry into Ghanaian society.
Yeah.
Beyond just their families, also the communities that they'll enter after. So people that will be neighbors, potential employers, even the person that you'll sit next to them on the bus, is just recognize their humanity and understand that like they were in a difficult situation, but there is space for them to turn their circumstance around.
I couldn't say it any better.
All right, guys, this has been a lovely conversation. I hope we get to do it again some other time. We happen to be in the country. I don't know when that is gonna be, but yeah, I just hope we get to do this some other time. Next month, basically. That sounds.
I'll be back in December.
Oh, I see. Then Astonique, then we'll be inviting you to another of our episodes.
I'd be glad to come.
I won't be leaving. So.
Okay, so this has been Community First podcast, where we have legal and social conversations with the community. Catch you another time.
Bye.